Doncaster, England, September 14, 2007. It was a Friday morning like any other in the Gosden household. Kevin and Glenys Gosden left early for work. Their two children, Charlotte and Andrew, were expected to head off to school shortly after. Charlotte had already gone, but Andrew, gifted, quiet, intense Andrew, never showed up. He didn't board the school bus. He didn't go to school. He didn't go to a friend's house. He went to the Doncaster railway station, alone, bought a one-way ticket to London, and disappeared without a trace. The ticket vendor remembered him, not because he seemed scared, but because he seemed calm, focused, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. That was the last confirmed sighting of Andrew Gosden. No one ever saw him again. But the story didn't really start there. 3 months before Andrew vanished, he stopped sleeping normally. His parents brushed it off as teenage restlessness. He was 14. A bit of insomnia was nothing to panic over. But Charlotte would later recall hearing him whisper at night, talking to himself, scribbling in his notebooks. She once saw him crouched near the heater vent in his room, speaking into it like it was a telephone. When she asked him what he was doing, he smiled and said, "It's okay. They're still sleeping, but I have to draw them." The police began their investigation immediately after Andrew was reported missing. They interviewed everyone at the train station, reviewed CCTV footage. They found clips showing Andrew walking confidently through King's Cross Station around 11:25 a.m. that day, alone. No one following him, no one meeting him, no luggage, no phone, no ID. He withdrew £200 from his savings account before leaving. That was the last physical trace, until the drawings surfaced. 3 weeks after the disappearance, Glenys was cleaning Andrew's room. Not for the first time, but this time something felt wrong. She kept noticing how cold it was in there, even though the window was shut. Behind Andrew's dresser, she found a sketchbook, unmarked, torn at the edges, as if it had been shoved there in a panic. She opened it and screamed, page after page after page of grotesque, surreal illustrations. People with their mouths stitched shut, black holes where eyes should be, a girl drowning in ink, a family of 4 burning, smiling as they melted, a door drawn over and over, but each version slightly different. And then, the words, written repeatedly on the bottom of each page. "I have to draw them so they stay asleep. They only wake when forgotten. The sleepless eat names." Kevin called the police immediately, but the drawings were dismissed as teenage angst. Creative venting, they said, but Glenys didn't buy that, because she started dreaming of the drawings herself. October 2007. The Gosdens received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photocopy of a page from Andrew's sketchbook, one they hadn't seen before. This one showed Andrew himself, standing in a room full of mirrors. All of the mirrors reflected him, but in each one, his face was missing. On the back, in red pen, he drew too deep. Police investigated the source of the letter. It had been mailed from Rochester, Kentucky, a place Andrew had no known connection to. The trail went cold. Again. Then came the basement discovery. 2 months after Andrew vanished, Kevin started storing boxes in their small basement, something Andrew used to do when he needed quiet. The family hadn't gone down there in weeks. In the far corner, Kevin noticed a stack of papers folded under an old rug, pages torn from another notebook, more drawings, more writing. This time, the figures weren't just monsters. They were children. One looked unmistakably like Andrew. Another looked like a young girl with white eyes and no mouth. On one of the pages, a message was written sideways in what looked like charcoal. "If I stop drawing her, she comes back. But when I get it right, she sleeps a little longer. She's under the stairs now." Kevin tore the place apart. Under the stairs, in every wall panel, crawl space, vent, looking for something, anything. He found nothing. But that night, the family dog, a normally silent border collie, sat at the top of the basement stairs and growled for 3 hours straight, refusing to go down. And then came the second child. In early 2023, nearly 16 years later, A 13-year-old boy named Oliver from Essex was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after refusing to sleep for 6 straight days. He claimed a girl with no mouth kept appearing in his dreams, that she floated into his room through the heating vents, that she smelled like pencil shavings and ash, and that she was angry because he wouldn't draw her. Doctors assumed it was a stress response, until he started drawing, and the images matched Andrew's artwork, almost exactly. Authorities initially dismissed it as internet contamination. Someone had shared Andrew Gosden's drawings online, they assumed. But here's the twist. Andrew's drawings were never released to the public. Not one. They had never been scanned, published, or shared. And when Oliver's mother was asked how her son could have copied them so perfectly, she replied, "He said the drawings weren't his. He said he was just finishing someone else's work." After the discovery of Andrew's first sketchbook behind the dresser, his parents thought the worst was over. They had seen the nightmare fuel. Stitched mouths, black-eyed children, cryptic warnings. Police brushed it off as disturbed imagination. He was under pressure. Gifted kids sometimes fixate. It doesn't mean anything. But the second sketchbook was worse. It wasn't hidden behind anything. It was inside something, inside the drywall of the bedroom closet, sealed behind an outlet panel. Kevin only found it because the power shorted in Andrew's room. When he removed the outlet plate, he saw something wedged into the wall cavity. A leather-bound notebook, stitched shut with black thread. No title, no name, just a smear of charcoal on the cover. He should have handed it to the police, but he opened it. Inside were precise architectural floor plans, each one labeled "her rooms" in capital letters. There were no windows in any of them, just walls, vents, mirrors, and doors that went nowhere. Each page had a different room drawn, always with 2 things consistent. 1. A small figure, a child, drawn in the center, arms at sides, no face. 2. A phrase written in block letters somewhere near the ceiling. "Do not wake her." One of the rooms had a name, the Black Room. Next to the diagram, Andrew had scribbled, "It's under everything. Under the floor, under the paint, under the house, under me." Glennies took the book to the police. This time, they photographed every page and locked the original in evidence. But then something strange happened. 2 days later, an officer came to the Gosdens' home. He asked to retrieve the drawings again, citing procedural errors. But when Glennies asked him which station he was from, he hesitated, stuttered, and then just left. Later, when they called the department, they were told no one had been sent. No one had been authorized to collect anything, and the description Glennies gave of the man, tall, balding, pale, black coat, didn't match anyone on the force. Back in Andrew's room, the family began noticing changes. The closet light, which had been broken for years, started flickering at night. The vent in the ceiling began to whistle softly between 2 and 3 a.m., even though there was no wind. And Glennie swore she saw someone else's handwriting appear in the margins of the floor plans. Writing that hadn't been there before. One phrase kept repeating, "She lives in the space between rooms." Charlotte began sleeping with her lights on. Kevin installed a camera in Andrew's room, hoping to catch whatever was causing the disturbances. But the camera would turn off on its own, always at 2:17 a.m. And when he checked the footage, he found nothing but static and a faint whispering sound, like someone scribbling with a pencil. 2008 months later. In February, a local archivist named Elizabeth Carr contacted the Gosdens after reading about the case. She claimed she had found something connected in the historical building blueprints of their neighborhood. At first, they were skeptical until she showed them a diagram from 1953. It was a map of pre-renovation coal tunnels beneath Doncaster, and one of the tunnels ran directly beneath Andrew's home. The tunnel was sealed in 1964 after a structural collapse that killed 2 workers. But here's what chilled them. The name of the shaft that ran beneath the house was Black Room Access. Elizabeth had no idea why it was named that. It wasn't a term used in mining. It wasn't even officially registered, just written by hand on a copy of the blueprints. She offered to take them to the municipal archives, where she claimed there were more sketches, One submitted anonymously in 1965 after several children in the area began reporting the same dream. But before they could meet again, Elizabeth disappeared. Police said she moved away, but her phone remained active in Doncaster for 2 more months. Her apartment, locked from the inside, mail piling up, food left in the sink. On the inside of her bedroom door, someone had scrawled a single sentence: "She doesn't like to be researched." Back to the Gosdens. Kevin grew obsessed with the black room. He measured the house, studied the floor, checked beneath the rugs, beneath the tiles, inside the air vents. Nothing. Then one night he stepped onto a floorboard in Andrew's room, and it gave a little, just a bit. He returned the next day with tools, ripped up the board. Underneath was a crawl space, no more than 4 feet deep. But there, in the dust, lay a perfectly square blackened door. A trapdoor sealed with 8 iron nails, each driven in at an angle. On top of it, one of Andrew's missing shoes. The family never opened it. They called the police. The police came, recorded it, took photos. Then, for some reason, they resealed it and left, claimed it was unrelated to the case. When Kevin asked for the report, he was told, "That part of the investigation has been classified." That night, Glenys found a message in her kitchen window written in condensation. He opened it once. That's why he had to draw. Weeks passed. The Gosdens moved out of the house in June of 2008. They couldn't bear it anymore, the sounds, the fear, the unending silence from the police. But before they left, Glenys opened Andrew's closet one last time. Inside, she found a new drawing pinned to the wall. It hadn't been there before. It showed a family of 4 sleeping. And underneath them, in the floorboards, a girl with no mouth, her white eyes open, watching. If you ask around Doncaster, especially among the older locals, some remember the old rhyme. A short, strange chant whispered by children in the 1960s and 70s. Few remember the full version. Most brush it off as nonsense. But it always started with the same line: "If she finds your name, you'll never wake again." They called her Marella. Not Mary, not Marla. Marella. A name that never appeared in school records or census data, yet nearly every child in Andrew's old neighborhood could recall stories about her. In 2008, following the strange crawlspace discovery beneath Andrew's floor, Glenys began interviewing old neighbors, teachers, and anyone who remembered the area before the renovations in the 1980s. She kept a notebook. In it, a recurring theme. Children had dreams about a girl with no mouth, white eyes, hair that moved like it was underwater. And they all described the same behavior. She'd appear in corners of dreams, motionless, watching. If you looked directly at her, she'd open her mouth, though there was no mouth to open, and a screaming sound would begin inside your skull. You'd wake with a nosebleed. Or worse. One girl in 1971 reportedly went blind after such a dream. Her family moved away immediately. Her records vanished. Another boy, 9-year-old Liam Fletcher, began drawing the same face repeatedly in his schoolbooks. His drawings were eerily close to Andrew's. Same stitched features, same long neck, same black background. His mother found him in their pantry one morning, completely catatonic, with only a crayon in his hand and the word Marella scratched into the wall over and over. He never spoke again. A town myth? Sleep paralysis? Mass hysteria? That's what doctors called it at the time. But the dreams kept happening. Even now, decades later, Glenys found a retired schoolteacher, Margaret Hughes, who recalled disciplining children for drawing black girls with no mouths. She said something that chilled Glenys to the bone. It wasn't just the drawings. They'd leave their desks empty and say she was sitting there. "I couldn't breathe." And they always said it the same way, like someone had told them what to say. What made this more disturbing was a page found in Andrew's second sketchbook. It wasn't a drawing. It was a set of dates, 10 of them. All matched the years in which child patients had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital outside of Doncaster with symptoms of nighttime hallucinations, verbal regression, and self-harming artistic behavior. Some of the notes had been scribbled over in Andrew's hand. One phrase repeated: "She's not in my head. She's under it." In early 2009, after the family had moved to Sheffield, Kevin received a phone call from an unlisted number. It lasted less than 20 seconds. A child's voice whispered, "She remembers your house." Then static. Then silence. He reported it to the authorities. The line was never traced. At this point, theories exploded online. People speculated Marella was an egregore, a thought form created by collective fear. Others said she was a tulpa. Some pointed to the coal shaft collapse in 1964 and claimed it awakened something beneath the town. But one theory gained traction on fringe forums: that children like Andrew, Liam, and Oliver weren't seeing Marella. They were feeding her. Through drawings. Through dreams. Through fear. One chilling post read, "She only exists if you believe in her, but she grows if you draw her." Then came a message from someone claiming to be a former sleep technician from a clinic that treated Andrew briefly in 2006. He refused to give his name, but he sent Glenys a scan document, a sleep EEG report. It had been redacted in every official channel. No record of it remained in Andrew's NHS file. The chart showed something abnormal. Extreme spikes in brainwave activity occurring precisely at 2:17 a.m. night after night. The technician had written a note in the margin. Patient displays rapid eye movement before onset of sleep. Impossible unless dream state is accessed prematurely. Possible subject is not entering sleep but something adjacent. And then, in a different pen, clearly not part of the official report: "He's not dreaming. He's remembering." Glenys kept digging. One night in late 2009, she received an anonymous package. No return address. Inside, a cassette tape labeled only "Vent Before," and a torn drawing of a faceless girl. She played the tape. At first, white noise. Then, at 2:17 on the timestamp, a sound emerged. Scratching. Like charcoal on paper. Over and over. And then a voice. Faint. Hoarse. "She's in the walls. She moves like ink. Don't say her name. If you say her name, she draws you next." Glenys never slept that night. Or the next. By the following week, her hair had begun to thin. Kevin reported she would wake in the middle of the night and sit facing the bedroom wall, scribbling on it with her fingernail, whispering she's still under the room. They took her in for observation in early 2010. In her journal, found beside her bed, was a final entry. "I think Andrew wasn't afraid of her. I think he knew her. Maybe that's why he left. To keep her in." But the question remained. Where did the Marella myth start? Some believe it predates Doncaster. Some say it started with a coal miner's daughter who fell into a shaft in 1921 and was never found. Others believe the name Marella is an auditory corruption, a name heard in dreams, not in reality. But there's a final twist. The word Marella appears once in a folklore archive in the Doncaster Central Library, dated 1893. In a child's rhyme scribbled inside a Bible margin. "Draw her soft and draw her slow, lest her eyes begin to glow. Never speak or say her name, or she will draw you just the same." Doncaster, May 17, 1965. It was just after midnight when the fire alarm sounded at St. Martin's School for Girls, a modest brick building with a small dormitory and a long history of student silence. By the time firefighters arrived, most of the damage was isolated to the headmaster's office and the school archives. No deaths, no serious injuries, just a fire. The official report blamed faulty wiring. Nothing more. Except, for student records were missing. One was only half burned. And what survived was enough to raise questions decades later. Name, Ella Marie Rollins. DOB, February 21, 1952. Age at disappearance, 13. Notes partial charred. Subject reports vivid night disturbances. Claims to see herself duplicated in mirrors. Speaks to vents. Describes a second girl inside walls. Reports feeling watched through chalkboards. Most recent comment, "I'll be drawn next if I don't draw her first." Ella Rollins went missing on May 16, 1965, the night before the fire. She'd been held in detention after school for drawing disturbing images in her literature book, including faceless girls and underground hallways labeled the Black Room. When staff came to check on her, the detention room was empty. The window was still locked. The door had been closed from the outside. And on the blackboard, written in chalk mixed with something red, she was under the desk. Her disappearance was never solved. No body. No suspects. And once the fire destroyed the records, it was like she never existed. Except, she did. Because in 2009, Andrew Gosden found a photograph. She was sorting through archived copies of the Doncaster Gazette for mentions of Andrew's school when she stumbled upon a class photo from St. Martin's, 1965. It showed a line of 11 girls and a teacher. 10 were smiling. One was not. A girl on the far left, head tilted slightly. Eyes glassy white in the photo, not from glare, but from overexposure. Her face fading. Her mouth blurred entirely. The caption beneath listed the names of the students. The girl on the far left? M. Rollins. No first name. No further records. But it lined up. This is where the threads started to connect across decades. 1965, Ella Rollins disappears. Obsessed with drawing a girl in the walls. 1971, Liam Fletcher hospitalized after drawing the same girl. Never spoke again. 2007, Andrew Gosden vanishes. Leaves behind identical drawings and references to the Black Room. 2023, Oliver, age 13, in Essex. Same drawings. Same phrases. The story wasn't just repeating. It was continuing. One detail in the Rollins file stood out to Glenys. It mentioned mirror disturbance. She remembered something odd. Back in Andrew's room, he had removed his mirror from the wall. When she asked why, he said, "She watches through the back of them. Not the front. The back." And now, Glenys noticed a strange seam in the paint where the mirror had once hung. She peeled it open carefully. Behind it, a hollow compartment in the wall. Inside, wrapped in black thread, another drawing. This one was different. It showed a girl, small, barefoot, hunched, sitting inside the wall. Not behind it, inside it, like a wasp inside plaster. Her head was cocked at an unnatural angle. Her hands were too large for her body, with thin, pointed fingers. And in place of a mouth, just charcoal smears. At the bottom of the page, "This is her when no one draws." And next to it, a signature E. M. Rollins. It was the only known drawing directly linked to the girl who vanished in 1965. And it had been in Andrew's wall. But how did it get there? The house had been renovated in the 1980s, before the Gosdens moved in. No records connected it to St. Martin's School, until Kevin pulled the property deed from county records. Before being sold in 1983, the house had been owned by a retired headmistress. Her name? Margaret Rollins, Ella's aunt. So now the connections were undeniable. Ella Rollins draws a silent, mouthless girl as she disappears inside a locked room. Her drawing ends up in Andrew's bedroom wall decades later. Andrew goes missing, leaving behind nearly identical art. And children still dream of the same girl, whispering through vents and mirrors. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a pattern. One that traveled by sketch, by dream, by memory. In the burned files, Glenys also found something else. A half-scorched map. It was a floor plan, not of St. Martin's, but of something beneath it. There were narrow hallways labeled closures, rooms labeled storage, B1, and vent hall, and one room circled in red pencil. Black room, sealed, per instructions. She brought it to a retired fire marshal who had responded to the 1965 blaze. He barely looked at it before saying, "That room doesn't exist. Never did. We cleared every part of that basement." But when Glenys asked why the school was demolished in 1981, despite being structurally sound, he hesitated. There was something behind the foundation we weren't supposed to access. Something filled in with clay and iron. We were told to leave it. He refused to say more. But a week later, Glenys received a final envelope. No return address, just the word Ella handwritten in black ink. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed a mirror, cracked, sitting on the ground in a dark crawl space. In the reflection, a girl crouched low, her mouth blurred, and behind her another mirror, another reflection, and another, each layer getting smaller, darker, more twisted. At the very back, almost imperceptible, was a face. Andrew's face. Rochester, Kent, October 4th, 1974. Firefighters responding to a small blaze at the ruins of the St. Bridget's Chapel, an abandoned 18th century structure long rumored to be haunted, made an unexpected discovery. A girl, no older than 7, barefoot, covered in soot, standing motionless just outside the collapsed entryway. She didn't cry, she didn't run, she only whispered, but not in any way that made sense. She spoke backward. Authorities were baffled. No missing child reports matched her description. No one came forward. For the time being, they gave her a name, Jane Doe Rochester. She was admitted to a local hospital for observation. Doctors were stunned when they realized her reverse speech wasn't random gibberish. It was fluent English, played in reverse order, complete with pauses and natural tone. A linguist was brought in. He recorded her and played it backward. This is what they heard. The girl with no mouth lives behind glass. She found a new boy. He wears the face of someone missing. He draws to stop her waking. She is inside now. No one had said anything to the girl about Andrew Gosden, because Andrew Gosden wouldn't be born for another 13 years. And yet she said his name, twice, once backward, Wordna, once forward, in a sudden, terrifying moment of clarity. Andrew is drawing her too loud. The girl refused food, would only drink water. She was given crayons and paper to help her express herself. She used only black and white. Her first drawing, a boy sitting at a desk sketching. Behind him, a mirror. In the mirror, a blurred girl reaching out with no mouth. The second drawing, a spiral of faceless people all walking into a vent. The third, a girl standing in the corner of a cracked chapel, hands over her face. Her feet were melting into the ground. On the back of each page, she wrote one word, Marella. Investigators searched local records. They checked school enrollment, hospitals, social services. Nothing. The girl had no birth certificate, no family, no match in any database. When asked her name, she simply tapped the paper, Marella. She was held at the Glebe House psychiatric unit where she continued to draw obsessively. Over time, her drawings shifted. They became more complex, more intelligent, but darker. One showed an overhead blueprint almost like a building plan with rooms labeled. Glass room, vent walk, chalk skin, the quiet, and one room at the very center. She waits. In January 1975, after 3 months in care, the girl disappeared. Her room was sealed from the inside. No broken window, no missing clothing, only a final drawing left on her bed. It showed a boy, Andrew, in a school uniform, standing at the edge of a spiral staircase descending into black. Above him, a mirror. Inside the mirror, a girl, faceless, with 2 white eyes and something in her hand. A pencil. The case was never made public. All records of the Rochester girl were sealed under the Official Secrets Act, a fact later uncovered by a journalist, Callum Briers, in 1996. He wrote a draft article about the strange case, connecting it to a pattern of disappearances in the Kent area involving gifted children and disturbing drawings. He never published it, because 1 month later he went missing. In his flat, authorities found his walls covered with black charcoal sketches, all showing the same figure in different rooms. A girl with no mouth, always facing the viewer, written in smudged ink above his desk. She's already drawn me. Jump to 2008. Andrew Gosden receives an anonymous envelope. Inside, a single sketch on yellowed paper, a scan of one of the Rochester girl's drawings, the spiral of faceless people. And at the center of the spiral, a tiny stick figure labeled AG. Attached was a note. You're not the first. She finds them through paper, through glass, through names. The Rochester girl knew about Andrew before he was even born. She doesn't forget. The Gosdens took the drawing to a forensic analyst. The paper was confirmed to be from the early 1970s. The charcoal composition identical to what was found in Andrew's bedroom. But there was a further discovery. Infrared analysis revealed faint sketches beneath the visible ones. They weren't drawings. They were numbers. A set of 10 dates, all matching years in which children from the UK had gone missing under strange or unsolved circumstances, all of them aged between 11 and 14. All of them classified as no foul play suspected. All of them reported odd behavior in the weeks leading up to their disappearances, including whispering into vents, compulsive drawing, or claiming something was behind the mirror. Glennies began working with a private researcher, Dr. Sarah Helly, a psychologist with expertise in anomalous cognitive patterns and recurring folklore in children. Dr. Helly made an observation. This isn't about one girl haunting many. This is about a system. A loop. She's not a ghost. She's a transmission. And Andrew may have been the strongest receiver yet. Then came the most chilling evidence of all. A child in Kent, April 2024, age 13. Unrelated to any of the known families. Never told about the case. He was caught by his teacher drawing the exact spiral of faceless people found in the Rochester girl's file. When asked where he got it from, he said, "She showed it to me, in the black glass. I only draw it to make her happy. She told me Andrew isn't done yet. He's still drawing from the inside." So we asked the question, where do they go? Not their bodies, not their belongings. Them. What if it isn't death? What if it's inward? A folding, a layering, like reflections inside reflections. A drawing inside a drawing. And what if the Rochester girl, Ella Rollins, Andrew Gosden? They're still somewhere in that spiral? Waiting. Essex, February 2023. Dr. Elaine Priest was a respected child psychologist with 2 decades of experience working with trauma-affected youth. She had handled extreme cases, abuse survivors, war refugees, children who'd witnessed murders. But when she met Oliver Hale, age 13, she wrote this in her personal notebook that night. "This is the first time I felt afraid of a child." Oliver had been referred to her after 6 consecutive nights without sleep. His parents said he was terrified of going to bed. Not because of nightmares, but because, in his words, "That's when she whispers into my pillow." At first, Dr. Priest assumed early-onset schizophrenia, until he showed her his drawings. They were nearly identical to Andrew Gosden's, which had never been made public. They included the spiral of faceless people, a black square labeled vent mirror, a figure with no mouth always in the background, never fully detailed, and beneath many of them a strange phrase written in mirror text. "I am her drawing now." Session 1 recorded. Dr. Priest asked Oliver how long he'd been drawing the girl. He replied, "I didn't start. I'm just finishing her. Andrew was better, but he drew too fast. That's why she folded him. She folds people when they forget her. If they stop drawing, she gets loud." When asked what folded meant, Oliver picked up a piece of paper, drew a stick figure on it, and folded it into quarters. He then whispered, "Still there, but not walking anymore." That night, Dr. Priest reviewed the recording alone. Something was wrong. The audio distorted at 3 specific points, all occurring at 2:17 a.m., the same time Andrew had experienced REM spikes. When she reversed the distortion, she heard, "Black glass is open. She remembers your voice. Draw or descend." Disturbed but curious, she scheduled a second session. She would never attend a third. Session 2, March 1st, 2023. Oliver arrived carrying a notebook. It was new, unmarked. He placed it on her desk without a word. Inside were only 3 pages of drawings. Page 1. A girl with no mouth sitting in a crawl space made of mirrors. In front of her, a boy with wide, hollow eyes drawing her. Above them, "Black room smells like ash and ink." Page 2. A narrow hallway lined with open doors, each containing a person crying blood. One door was labeled E.P. Dr. Priest's initials. Page 3. A floor plan of her own office, accurately drawn. In the corner of the page, in childlike scrawl, "She will sit behind you at 2:17. Dr. Priest ended the session early. She emailed her colleague that night, writing, "Either I'm being pranked, or this boy is channeling something real. I'm afraid to look into mirrors in my own house." He described my dream from last night in exact detail, the tapping behind the wall, the crawling sound in the vent. The email was timestamped 1:46 a.m. At 2:19 a.m., her security system logged the front door opening. She was never seen again. Police found her home in order. Her coat was still hanging. Keys untouched. Front door locked from the inside. The only clue was in her home office. Her chair was turned to face the wall. And on the wall behind the chair, scrawled in charcoal, "She folded me gently." On the desk sat Oliver's notebook. But now 6 pages were filled, not 3. The new pages included a drawing of Dr. Priest standing beside a mirror. Inside the mirror, a different version of her screaming silently. A spiral with the name Elaine at the center. And a blacked-out room labeled Folding Point. The police searched for Oliver, but his family had moved the day before. No forwarding address. No school re-enrollment. No trace. Glenys Gosden learned of the incident 6 months later when a contact from a child psychiatric network forwarded her a copy of the final police report unofficially. She studied the drawings. They were consistent, nearly identical in line, weight, and symbology to Andrew's, to Ella Rollins, to the Rochester girls. But it was one line of handwriting that made her blood run cold, written in pencil on the back cover of Oliver's notebook. "She folds them into the drawing. They are her paper now. Glenys mailed the evidence to Dr. Sarah Helly, the private researcher helping her connect the cases. Dr. Helly called her back the next day, shaken. She had gone back through her own archives and found a recurring anomaly. Every child who ever described the girl with no mouth had started drawing spirals just before they began to speak of mirrors and vents. The spiral was a pattern, a blueprint, a descent. Each spiral was subtly different, as if each child added one more rotation. Dr. Helly ran the drawings through an image processing algorithm. The final spiral matched a helix structure, specifically the interior layout of a historical coal shaft beneath Doncaster. One labeled in 1964 as Black Room Access. The Black Room wasn't metaphor. It was real, and all signs pointed back to it. A space of recursion. A spiral where names, faces, memories could be folded into paper. But here's the horror. The final notebook page left behind in Dr. Priest's home had a list of names. 10 of them. 8 had been previously confirmed as missing children linked to the case. 2 were new. Elaine Priest, already missing. And Sarah Helly. Glenys tried calling Sarah immediately. No answer. She drove to her home. There was no sign of struggle, but on her refrigerator was a post-it note that hadn't been there the night before. It simply read, "Don't forget to draw her. Doncaster, 2024. After sitting vacant for years, the Gosden home was finally sold. The buyer was Thomas Reed, a recently divorced graphic designer looking for a quiet place to start over. He'd seen the house online. Cheap, remote, still structurally sound. The history? Just a weird missing persons case, the agent said. Old news. Thomas didn't believe in ghosts, but that would change by his second night. The first thing he noticed was the sound behind the mirror in the upstairs bedroom, Andrew's old room. A faint, erratic ticking. Sometimes scratching. Always around 2:17 a.m. Thinking it was rats or warped piping, Thomas removed the large wall mirror, the same one Andrew had torn down years earlier. As he tilted it forward, the glass cracked from the inside. No impact, no pressure, just a slow fracture spidering from the center outward. Behind the mirror was a narrow tunnel, no wider than a person. No light inside. The walls of the tunnel weren't brick or plaster, they were lined with dark, glossy tile, almost like obsidian. Each tile slightly reflective, just enough to catch movement. And down the narrow corridor, faintly visible in flashlight glow, small handprints. Dozens of them. Thomas stepped inside. It was colder than the rest of the house. Not just cool, damp, like underground stone. After several meters, he reached the end, a sealed panel. Charcoal drawings covered the tile. All childlike, all incomplete, but one stood out. A faceless girl, arms stretched outward, white eyes wide open. Her body was unfinished, only the outline was complete. And next to her, a single sentence smeared in charcoal and something darker. She cannot finish herself. Thomas snapped photos. Sent them to his brother, a journalist. He didn't mention them online, not yet. That night, his phone camera kept glitching. The photos wouldn't save. Instead, the album filled with mirror selfies Thomas had never taken, each showing a dark silhouette just over his shoulder. The same silhouette every time. And then, one photo that hadn't been taken at all. Andrew Gosden, or someone who looked exactly like him, seated cross-legged, holding a pencil. Eyes empty. By the third night, Thomas stopped sleeping. The house creaked like it was breathing. The vent in the hallway began to whisper. His laptop screen flickered black, then displayed one phrase. You opened her tunnel. Finished the drawing. Driven by terror or compulsion, maybe both, Thomas returned to the tunnel. He brought paper. Charcoal. He sat at the end of the corridor and began to trace the unfinished girl on the tile. As he completed her shoulders, the walls began to vibrate softly, like a heartbeat. When he sketched the outline of her mouth, just a hollow circle, the handprints began to shift downward, and the mirror behind him cracked further. Then came a voice, whispery yet childlike. Stop. She needs someone real. Thomas ran. The next morning, he packed a bag, went to the police station with photos, drawings, and a USB stick. He begged them to send someone to check the tunnel. They dismissed him at first until a young officer mentioned hearing about the Andrew Gosden case. 2 officers were dispatched to the house. Only one came out. PC Raymond Ellis was found in the tunnel, sitting cross-legged, catatonic. Eyes wide, pencil in hand, drawing on the floor. A spiral. The same spiral seen in Andrew's and Oliver's notebooks. He was placed under psychiatric hold. When asked what he saw, all he said was, "She's waiting for someone to draw her face right." Investigators sealed the tunnel. Again, they called it unsafe. They said it would be filled with concrete. But days later, the contractors refused to enter the house. One left a voicemail for the city engineer. "There's something in the glass. We saw ourselves in it, but we weren't moving." They were. And one of them had Andrew Gosden's school badge on. Local news picked up the story. Paranormal forums exploded. The Marella spiral theory resurfaced, now with new photos uploaded anonymously. One image showed the unfinished wall drawing. Another showed a charcoal figure emerging from tile, mid-crawl. The post was titled, "She cannot finish herself, so she draws you." And attached was one final audio clip, the last voicemail from Thomas Reed, dated the night he fled the house for good. In the background, the sound of scratching. Then, "She's not a ghost. She's a blueprint. A hollow that wants filling. If you give her your face, she lets you stay. If you stop drawing, she folds you." Click. Thomas was never seen again. His car was found parked outside a mirror shop 12 miles away. Keys inside. Rearview mirror shattered. Passenger side mirror missing. On the dashboard, a sketchbook. One final page. A drawing of a spiral. At the center, a face. Not Marella's. His. Manchester, 2025. When data scientist Lena Vance first joined an online paranormal research forum, it was just a side hobby, a way to de-stress from her job at a biomedical AI firm. She loved cold cases. Weird patterns. Disappearances that didn't add up. She didn't expect to become the one who finally saw the full picture. It started with a challenge. Someone posted a thread titled, "What if every child drawn by Marella went missing at the exact same REM time?" Lena laughed at first, but then she began to gather data. Police reports from the Gosden case, 2007. Hospital admission times for Oliver, 2023. Sleep log entries for Ella Rollins, 1965. Journal timestamps from Callum Briers, 1996. Session notes from Dr. Priest and Dr. Helly. One detail stood out across nearly every entry. 2:17 a.m. The time children would jolt awake. The time scribbles would begin. The time figures appeared behind mirrors. The time drawings changed by themselves. She created a spreadsheet with over 40 documented cases of Marella-related phenomena. It included location, time of incident, type of manifestation, dream, drawing, mirror event, auditory, age of victim, notes on artwork or verbal phrases. Then she ran a pattern search. At first, it looked like noise. But after applying geolocation clustering and a custom spiral geometry algorithm, the screen flickered. Something began to form. A perfect logarithmic spiral. And at its center, Doncaster, Andrew Gosden's home. But this wasn't just about Andrew. The spiral expanded, absorbing the Rochester girls' location, Ella Rollins' school, Oliver's home in Essex, even the burned chapel in Kent. It wasn't symbolic. It was literal. The disappearances were mapping out a shape. A spiral. One that was still growing. And if the rate of new reports continued, the spiral's next concentric ring would reach central London by late 2025. Lena posted her findings in a private Discord server of digital investigators. 2 users replied within 24 hours. At InkMirror17, "You found the fold spiral. It's not expanding. It's replicating. At Vent Noise. There's another in Canada. Smaller. Same pattern. Same name, Marella." Both users deleted their accounts shortly after. Frightened but determined, Lena isolated audio logs from 3 separate cases, Andrew, Oliver, and a lesser-known girl from Wales who had drawn the same spiral in 1991 before vanishing. She overlaid the audio at 2:17 a.m. from each case. What she heard made her stomach flip. Layered whispers, different voices, same cadence. All repeating the same phrase. "You drew me wrong." She reversed the audio, boosted hidden frequencies, and analyzed for Morse code. There was a message. "She draws through us. Spiral is mouth. We are lines. You are next." Lena contacted the Gosdens anonymously, sending them the map and audio files. The next morning, she received a single email reply from Glenys. Subject: "She's not expanding." Body: "We look too long. The spiral is memory. You don't draw it. It draws you. If you feel her watching, destroy your mirrors. And don't say her name aloud again." Gee, but Lena already had. She had said it out loud once while examining the map at 2:17 a.m. And after that night, the vents in her apartment began to click. The bathroom mirror no longer reflected her directly. There was always a slight delay. Sometimes it showed her smiling when she wasn't. And on her bedroom wall, she began finding faint pencil marks each morning. Spiral shapes. Getting closer to the center. Lena went dark 2 weeks later. Before disappearing, she uploaded a final image to the Discord group. It was a map overlay with the spiral now reaching into 4 new countries. The file was named spiral_seed replication 1.go. Attached was a photo of her mirror, cracked. In the center, the unfinished sketch of a girl, with one phrase scratched below it. Drawing complete when you forget who you are. The spiral wasn't a symbol. It was a mechanism, a recursive geometry, a spiritual engine, something that used minds like paper and fear like ink. And every drawing was a new iteration, a new seed. There's one final detail Lena's map uncovered, one she didn't live to explain. At the heart of the spiral, underneath the original black room shaft in Doncaster, was a sealed underground room listed only in a forgotten 1949 land survey. It had a label. One word. Vesica. Latin. Meaning a hollow. Or more precisely, a mouth. Doncaster, 2020. The former St. Martin's School for Girls, shuttered since 1982, was finally scheduled for demolition. Local officials had debated it for years, but now the building was deemed structurally unsound and, unofficially, bad luck. Contractor Darren Cole, 42, was overseeing the internal gutting. On his second day clearing debris from a collapsed classroom, he opened an air vent near the baseboard and pulled out something wrapped in electrical tape. A cassette tape. Label faded, but 2 things were still legible. Do not play. 217 only. At first, he thought it was a prank. Kids sneaking weird stuff into abandoned buildings. That night, curiosity got the better of him. He dug out an old cassette player, hit record on his phone for backup, and pressed play at 2:17 a.m. The recording begins with static, then rhythmic scratching, like pencil on paper, but frantic, increasing in speed, then slowing down. A pause, then a low hum, subtle, like wind through a vent, then a voice, faint, distant, reversed. Darren rewound the tape, played the segment backward. The voice was unmistakably a child's. She doesn't need doors anymore. Just names. Just faces. Andrew didn't finish her. That's why she took his. Darren froze. He'd heard the name Andrew Gosden in town over the years. A missing boy. Never found. He thought it was urban legend. The audio continued. 7 minutes in, the voice changed. Sharper. Clearer. Male. Teenage. No distortion. And the voice said calmly, "My name is Andrew Gosden. If you are hearing this, I'm inside the drawing now. She's using me to trace others. Don't say her name. Don't speak it. Don't write it. She needs you to acknowledge her. That's how she enters the lines. If you've drawn her, it's already too late." Darren shut the player off. Heart hammering. Palms slick. He looked at the time, 2:27 a.m. That's when he noticed the vent across the room. It was whistling slightly, and on the dust-coated floor just beneath it, pencil marks. Spiral-shaped. They hadn't been there before. He left the building that night. Never returned to the job site. He uploaded the audio online under a throwaway account, but it was taken down within hours. DMCA strike from an unnamed entity. But a few copies remained, and one landed in the inbox of Sarah Helly's research partner, who anonymously released a transcript. Among its final seconds, another reversed phrase. Slower. Replayed forward, it said, "If you hear her voice in silence, don't turn your head." The drawing watches back. Police were contacted. They retrieved the tape from Darren. It was entered into evidence. But 5 days later, the evidence room suffered a fire. Small. Contained. No injuries. But the only destroyed item? The cassette. The building was demolished. All vents and crawl spaces sealed. But one final photo leaked from the demolition crew. It showed a mirror found behind a blackboard in the basement. On the mirror, hundreds of fingerprints. Small. Child-sized. Pressed from the inside. And carved into the corner with something sharp. Paper isn't safe anymore. Back in Sheffield, Glenys received a copy of the transcript. She recognized Andrew's voice immediately. But it wasn't just the words. It was what he didn't say. Andrew always signed his Art AG. But the voice on the tape ended with a different name. "I'm the lines now. You can call me Marella." This changed everything. If Andrew had become part of the drawing, part of her, was Marella even a real girl? Was she ever human? Or was she a structure? A loop? An entity that assimilated people through memory and imagery? A mimetic parasite. A being not of blood and bone, but of graphite, mirror, and name. More tapes began to appear. One mailed anonymously to a podcast in Ohio. One slipped under the door of a London art gallery. One found buried in a time capsule at an elementary school in Berlin, despite the capsule being sealed since 1994. Each tape, similar content. Same time signature, 2:17 a.m. Same voice, same spiral. But the final recording, the one verified through VoicePrint AI, wasn't from a child. It was Elaine Preece, the missing psychologist. Her words. "I tried to draw her better, more human. I thought I could fix her, but she's not incomplete. She's unfinished on purpose. She makes you finish her so she can erase you. We're you. We're not haunted. We're harvested." London, March 2025. The Tate Modern receives an unmarked package. Inside, a single piece of thick archival paper, fresh ink, still damp, and one haunting image. A doorway, drawn in stark black, perfectly proportioned. At its center, a girl emerging. Only her head and right arm had crossed the threshold. But the mouth was missing. The eyes, empty white. Her fingers smeared across the page as if pushing forward, as if trying to climb out. The most disturbing part? The signature. Lower right corner. AG, March 17, 2025. Andrew Gosden had been missing for 18 years. The artwork was verified. The charcoal and ink were analyzed. The ink was homemade, oak gall-based, a style popular in the 1800s. The charcoal? Human bone-derived. The handwriting? Matched previous samples from Andrew's schoolbooks, near perfect. No fingerprints. No DNA. Just a single post-it note attached to the back. Not done yet. She still wants faces. Authorities reopened the file quietly. A detective from the original 2007 investigation, now retired, agreed to consult. He'd always believed there was more to Andrew's disappearance. He said something that stuck. "We thought he ran away, but maybe he was drawn away, lured, or copied. And now, maybe she's trying to draw herself out into us." Digital analysts reviewed the artwork again. Under infrared, faint underdrawings, initial sketch lines, corrections, sizing marks, all hand-done, but also names, buried beneath the ink, etched over, then erased. A list. First name, Ella M. Rollins. Second, Liam Fletcher. Third, Oliver Hale. Fourth, Elaine Preece. Fifth, Sarah Helly. Sixth, Andrew Gosden. The seventh line was blank. Just an underscore. Waiting. That week, the mirror outside the Tate restroom cracked. CCTV footage showed no one touched it. But for 6 minutes, the camera glitched. And in those frames, a figure appeared. Flickering. Barefoot. Child-sized. Hair hanging forward. No mouth. Glenys Gosden, now in her late 60s, was shown the drawing. She broke down immediately. Not because it was her son's work, but because the girl in the doorway wasn't Marella. That's not her. That's someone else. He drew someone new. And then came the worst confirmation of all. The drawing changed. It was being stored under lock and key in a temperature-controlled archive. Only 2 staff had access. No tampering. No exposure. But 3 days later, the girl's arm had moved. It was longer. Her fingers now reached the bottom of the frame. And the blank name line? It now read, "You." Elsewhere, unrelated children began reporting dreams. Of a door in a wall, slowly opening. Of a boy sketching in a dark room, his face half erased. Of a girl whispering without sound, mouthless, clawing through paper. A girl who only stopped moving when they drew her. And when they didn't, she came closer. Final discovery. A curator found a second sheet pressed flat against the back of the drawing, a reverse imprint. Pressed in like a ghost of graphite. It was the same drawing, but inverted as if seen from the other side. And in this version, the girl was smiling. No mouth, but smiling. Glenys recorded one last message before retreating from public view. He's still drawing. Somewhere. Not as a boy. Not as Andrew. But as the hand that finishes what others start. He's become her tool. Or maybe she became his. Either way, don't draw her. Don't name her. And for the love of God, don't hang mirrors. The final spiral map was updated one last time. It showed over 40 recorded events across 7 countries, all forming interlocking spiral patterns. Each had one central feature. A missing child. A mirror cracked at 2:17 a.m. And a drawing unfinished. Always waiting? You are reading this now. You've seen her name. You've pictured the drawing. Maybe you've even looked in the mirror today. If so, finish the drawing. or be folded into it.